Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
I'm Bob. How's it going?
Bob and I are here today to talk predominantly about this brand new 2024 Head Oblivion 102.
Yep.
We also have the 2023 Oblivion 94 over there. The graphic does change. It looks a lot like this, but it's more blue for next season, the 94. And we'll talk a little bit about that ski too, because I think it's very interesting how these two skis differ from each other, especially considering the similarities between them, mostly just shape.
Totally.
Because we kind of start losing those similarities when we get to construction, which we'll talk about in just a second. But I think before we do that, let's just introduce this new ski. So Head has taken the Oblivion line, which previously was 79, 84, 94, and they've given us two new skis for 2024, that being 102 and 116. And Bob, as you mentioned before we started filming, this is trendy.
Yeah, we got some trends, a trend alert here for these skis.
And one of those things that you thought was trendy was that it's athlete driven.
Yeah, which isn't something new, but it's
No,
always
it seems like you're, but it's a theme.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so Cole Richardson was integral in designing these and his signature model, the 116, the wider version of this.
Yeah.
He popped up on our radar, I don't know, a month ago on Top 5
like
Fridays.
Right.
You know, this kid, 22, 23-year-old adult, just ripping just fast backcountry lines on like a Core 117.
Yep.
And I think we both mentioned at the time, like, wow, this kid needs a twin tip core.
Yeah.
And, lo and behold, this is kind of that, coming to life. And these 102 and 116s do share similar constructions. So the athlete inspiration is more directed towards this 102, certainly than this 94.
Yeah, and we can talk more about this when we get to performance too, but I think looking at this ski through the lens, or at least while considering the accomplishments of Cole Richardson and his skiing style, helped me understand the intention of this ski.
Yeah.
And I think I'm really glad that I kind of had that realization, because there are a lot of new 101 and 102 twin tip skis for 2024. That's another thing.
Another
Kind
trend.
of put under the trendy umbrella there. And I personally, and I think you maybe a little bit too, was struggling to understand where this one fit.
Yeah.
And now I feel like I've got a really, really good sense of this new ski. And yeah, it's a lot different than that one.
Totally.
So, Bob, do you want to take us through that construction? Because I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that'll kind of take us to trend number 3.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Which we just did the Dynastar M-Cross 88. One of the big highlights there was their eco-friendly construction. We are seeing that move into Oblivion 102 and 116 as well. A little bit different of a methodology here, and more of like a head core construction in this 102 versus what we've seen in other Oblivions in the past. So we do get like 3 thin carbon laminates. So
is it 3 or 4?
It's 3.
That was 2 on top and 2 on bottom.
2 on top.
You dived into this more than I did.
They have good diagrams on their site,
Yep.
so I'm relying on that information for sure. But center strip under the core, and then a full width biaxial, which you can actually almost see.
Yeah, you can see it right above the edge there.
Yeah, so it goes full width.
Yeah.
Whereas the other one, the lower one, goes under damping layers in between the edge and the base. So there is damping layers in there as well, which we've seen in the newer core constructions. So we have those bottom layers, and then the wood core, which is part poplar and then part PET, polyethylene.
There's a big word.
I'm going to look at my notes here. I actually wrote it down and then took a picture of it. Polyethylene terephthalate, PET, is the more common name of it, which is basically recycled plastic bottles. So using that material as 3 vertical stringers. We've talked about like vertical metal technology for a while.
Yep.
Now it seems like we're moving into vertical plastic materials.
Yeah, other skis, we see that like Visco line control from Rossignol, which feels similar.
So now they're just using a more eco-friendly material.
Yeah. And then more carbon on top.
More carbon on top, fiberglass as well, curved.
Curved fiberglass.
That's what the picture shows. So what we're dealing with is a stiffer and lighter ski. It doesn't have the same core chamfer.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
So it's curved internally?
Internally.
Love it.
And so, as we've said before, you're putting those materials in a 3D format, you're enhancing the stiffness.
Yeah, so good time to give this thing a flex. Like, that's a pretty stiff ski.
Yeah, and like, here, do this one now.
This is fun.
Yeah.
That was scary.
It was almost not fun.
It was almost not fun. Oh, yeah.
But, yeah, quite a difference in flex.
Substantially different. Especially, like, right in the tail.
Yeah.
And probably right in the tip, too. Like, that's a lot of bend there. These things are strong.
Yeah, for sure. And when we get to performance, it kind of makes sense as to why the ski.
Different.
Yeah, it makes sense as to why this thing reacts
much differently.
Quite a bit differently than the 94. So, pretty interesting stuff there. Another damping layer just to offset that carbon. But there's a lot going on in this 102 and the 116, similar constructions.
I would say that it's not quite core stiff.
No.
But it's probably closer to core than Oblivion 94.
Yeah, I think everything's just a hair thinner.
Yeah.
From the core to the laminates, I think it's just a little thinner. So it's gonna react differently.
Now, like we said at the beginning, really the construction is where the differences lie, because the shape, obviously we're wider here, but the shape is pretty darn similar. So I think like a really important thing to point out about this ski is that there's no early taper.
Yeah.
And that is, I think it's fair to say that we're in 2024 now, maybe not standing here physically, but this ski exists in the year 2024, and I think that is rare. In 2024, for a twin tip to have extended side cut and no early taper whatsoever. Right. So that's really important. And, I'd say it's the same is true on that ski. And then from a rocker perspective, that's a lot of camber.
Yep.
And there is rocker here, but I would say less than at least I am now used to seeing in the 101, 102, upper 90 twin tip category.
Even lower, something like a QST 98, which isn't twin tippy, but it's still
has a lot more.
It's more of a story.
Absolutely.
In the written article, it takes one sentence to talk about the tip and tail rocker. Right. As in, there is tip and tail rocker.
Right.
But that's kind of the end of the conversation. There's nothing dramatic or earth-shattering about it.
Yeah, and I think it's just, like, visually, my impression of this ski, like, I suppose it helps that I've skied it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't scream maneuverability.
Right.
Where a lot of these new twin tips, like the ARVs that we just talked about, new line Chronic 101 that we will talk about, Elan Playmaker, like when you look at that shape, it basically screams, this is going to be maneuverable.
Yeah.
Where this, I don't know, it just doesn't, which like we were talking about earlier, it's fun that it doesn't, because it would be a really boring existence if everything was the same. Right. And then the last thing I want to point out about shape is turn radius, 22.8.
Long.
Pretty big.
Yep.
Which is actually the same as that ski in the slightly longer length, I believe, like the 184, or 185, where this is 22.8 and a 181. But it is interesting that ski has a long turn radius as well. Mm-hmm. It's just their personalities are quite a bit different.
Yeah.
So I think that tells the story for construction and shape. Bob, what do you think skiing this thing this year? Wait, hold on. Let's go back.
Okay.
We're just going to rewind 20 seconds. mount points.
Yep.
There's a range of 5 mount points on this ski. I feel like there absolutely would have been a comment if we forgot about this stuff. They have it marked as true center,
Yep.
which is actually true center, and then all mountain is -5. We did the majority of our testing at -5. I also skied it at -2, and we can talk a little bit more about that towards the end.
Yeah.
So yeah, back to performance. Bob, take it away.
Sure. From a directional perspective, like at -5,
Yeah.
very interesting stuff going on here. So a little bit more of a traditional feel in terms of true tip-to-tail edge contact. That lack of taper makes it so. Where this gets a little bit more interesting is that it's pretty torsionally stiff.
Yeah.
So every bit of input that you put into the ski gets really translated to the snow.
Yeah.
We talk about this with core all the time.
Yep.
Like super stiff, really reactive, really responsive. How does it work in a twin tip? It's a little different. I feel like the instant you get from hard pack to slightly soft, it really comes to life.
This guy.
I think that the hard pack is a little challenging. We're not looking at a 102 twin tip and saying, this is the best on ice performer that we've been on. Like, it's not that ski. It's definitely better suited to softer snow. So that you can take advantage of that reactivity as opposed to on firm snow, having it not really mesh with the stiffness of the ski and the flex.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a challenge when you're on something hard. I mean, that first day at Waterville I skied them was difficult. But then every other time after that on softer snow, varied conditions and terrain really kind of made more and more sense.
Yes.
I thought that this thing made some of the cleanest and roundest turns, similar to my experience on Revolt 96 this year. So really fun, engaging side cut, even though that number is long. Revolt has that longer number too.
Yep.
But you can get it all, which I think is really, really fun.
Yeah. It is interesting.
Yeah, it's a different feel.
Like so it probably will come across in the footage. On media shoot days like that, I'm trying to ski in control.
Yep.
And I feel like this ski is better to ski a little bit out of control. Because, like, especially on a groomer, like when I was trying to, like, be really calculated with, like, speed control and, like, make different turn shapes and stuff like that, there were moments when I felt like I was just kind of, like, fighting it.
Mm-hmm.
I think, for me at least, on firm snow, like, I just go fast.
Yeah.
And then, like, that kind of got back to when I was talking about understanding this ski through how Cole Richardson skis. That makes sense.
Yeah.
And I kept trying to ski it like an Oblivion 94, which for me, at my weight, is much easier to bend and manipulate.
Yeah.
And this, I, like, struggled a little bit to bend and manipulate at times. But if you're looking for, like, a ripping super strong twin tip,
Yeah.
there aren't that many anymore.
No, and not at this weight. You know, we didn't
Right.
touch on weight. It's about 1,850 grams at this level, whereas like an Unleashed 98 is pushing over 2,000.
Yeah.
So
And I don't, like, even though there's not metal in this ski,
Yeah.
I think you could make the argument that this feels even stronger, especially longitudinally,
Yeah.
than an Unleashed. Which, like, that as we as an industry are making this what feels like a shift to more playful, maneuverable skis,
Mm-hmm.
there's fewer and fewer of things like this
Yeah.
out there. And when you talk about it being athlete inspired and stuff like that, I think it makes a lot of sense.
it's so funny. We have the same conversation with the Core, like the Core 93, where like
Well, yeah, it makes
you're like, I can't get it to do what I want it to do at slower speeds.
on a groomer.
On a groomer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is right in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
Like I like fit
Right.
right in with this thing.
Which is the difference between our weights,
Yeah.
probably, and like a little bit of technique, I
Yeah.
think. But I agree 100% with you that when you get it into soft snow, it like really comes alive.
Yeah.
And we've talked about what a long turn radius can do to a ski, and especially for a ski like this that doesn't have a crazy amount of taper or rocker,
Mm-hmm.
it helps it be less catchy.
Yeah.
So we were at Pico, I think, and I skied it on the side of the trail, on they had a start gate area, and I 180'd on it, and then 180'd off it, and then you were like, ski the right side, and I went over there, and that was awesome.
Yeah.
And the ski is super intuitive in that regard, and I think that's, at least for me, that feels like the way that you should think about it if you're deciding if it's right for you.
Yeah.
I brought up a park skier who lives at Alta now. That, I think that's their park ski.
Right, that's their narrow ski.
This is their narrow park ski, because you can land and straight line on it and it'll be stable, but then it's still relatively centered and balanced, and then you can get it into softer snow and it doesn't feel catchy, and you can kind of throw it around and have fun on it and play. I think that's the right way to think about it, where that's your Stowe park ski.
Right, yeah, your Eastern Park ski for sure.
Yeah, and there is, I don't know, I think that's really interesting, and we have footage of skiing the 94 too, and if you're just looking for a playful, easygoing park ski, get the Oblivion 94.
Yeah.
That thing is sweet.
Yep.
It is easy to ski, it's intuitive, it's forgiving. You could put a pretty new intermediate on an Oblivion 94 and they'd be just fine.
Yeah.
Where this almost feels like, I'm hesitant to say an expert-only ski, but it's a real deal here.
Yeah, I think the reactivity of it brings it to that level where it's going to be it's going to be challenging for someone who's in the progression phase to
You just be along for the ride.
They're just not going to unlock the ceiling of it, which is a shame.
Right. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty cool way to build a line of skis.
Right.
So the 84 is now kind of your competition style twin tip. The 94 is your versatile, easygoing twin tip park ski. And then this is more of an aggressive, higher speed ski.
Yep.
And then you've got the 116 that's big mountain charger.
Right.
If you're worried about whether your skis are going to hold up to your 90-foot double backflip, well, you don't have to worry about that anymore.
Nope, it's all good.
So it's there's, within the Oblivion line, I think it's pretty easy to choose which ski is right for you, which I think is cool, and a little bit different than, say, ARVs. There's one right there.
Yeah.
If you were deciding between the new ARV line, do you go 94 or 100?
Right.
I don't know. That's pretty challenging. I could get hung up on that decision for days.
Right.
Especially where, between these two skis, easy.
Yeah. Yeah, the difference in construction of these two certainly makes it a different, even within the line within the brand.
Yeah.
I think that this brings up a longer conversation.
Yeah. Bob, anything else you want to say about Oblivion 102 here?
I don't know. We should talk about Park. We kind of had a little conversation about it yesterday.
That's what I was going to get to finally. I just wanted to make sure we weren't skipping over anything that you wanted to talk about before we got there.
Personally, I'm cool. I really found my home on that thing in softer snow and going across the fall line. Loved it.
Cool. If this was my park ski, I probably wouldn't do anything over a 360.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
I get it. Yep.
Because it's big.
Yeah.
And it's got a long turn radius.
Yeah, it's different than these other 101s. We've talked about that Chronic, that Playmaker.
Yeah.
Feel more park specific, whereas this feels more free ride specific with a park mentality.
I think so too.
And just even with the trend that we've seen these years with the increased taper, that Armada right there, in the Revolt, these more freestyle oriented twin tips, they're starting to get that taper in the tips and tails, and this is staying in the more traditional shaping sense for a twin tip.
Now, I'll add to this. If I lived in Mammoth and I got to hit much bigger jumps than I get to hit here in Stowe, I think I would actually quite like it.
Yep.
Because then it's a different, what's a 360 here in snow can become a 900.
Right.
When your jump's 70 feet long.
Right.
And you're in the air for
three times
as long. And that's that's legitimately how I
Yeah.
think about this ski is like that kind of Alta skier who
Right.
skis off that, what's the far looker's right chair? And like Willie Nelson,
I
when
don't
we
know,
were
I
out here, he
forget.
was like, this is our park.
Oh,
And
like the Wildcat.
yeah, the Wildcat. Yeah, thank you. And like when you're skiing down it, there's just lips built like
Yep.
everywhere. Like I think about that skier when I think about this ski. And then I also think about like, he's a Black Crows athlete, but Bernie Rosso out in Mammoth, who's like ripping big mountain skier. Like you'll see him skiing the gnarliest lines on the mountain, and then he goes down into the like Unbound Main Park where the jumps are huge. They're some of the biggest jumps in the country, and he'll do like big floaty switch fives and stuff like that. And like this feels like such a good ski for that type of skier.
Yeah. It's cool stuff. Lots
Yeah,
of lots of trends.
No, it's super cool. Yeah. It feels like a Head.
Yep.
Like if Head's gonna make a twin tip that's 102 underfoot, this is basically what I would expect.
Yeah, I was not surprised.
I'd be like, yeah, it's probably gonna
Yeah.
feel a little bit like a race ski.
Right.
And like,
Yep.
I think there's an element to that, and when you
Yeah.
understand Head's heritage as a company, I think that makes sense. I think like that's more of an outlier
Right.
for Head.
And this is still a real ski too. I mean,
Totally vertical
Vertical
sidewall. We've talked
sidewall,
about that, yeah, a lot.
lots of camber. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a real deal.
Totally.
So,
Yeah, park crew
Yep.
member here at Stowe has a pair of those. He was really kind of stuck. He didn't know what skis to get this year. This was back in like early December. I think he had just broken a pair and was really kind of feeling like he was out of luck in his ski journey. And I was like, what about a Head Oblivion 94?
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, what is that?
Right.
Like, I've never heard of that in my life. And then fast forward a month later, he was like, this is the best ski
Right.
I've ever skied. He was like, this is perfect.
Yeah.
And watching him ski it, like, it just completely jived with it.
Right. Strong skier, good park skier,
Yeah.
good foot skills. Like,
Yeah.
loves it. It's
Yeah.
great.
Yep. So that's it. This is the new Oblivion 102. Hopefully you got some extra bonus info on the Oblivion 94 as well. Don't hesitate to leave any questions as usual. Happy to talk more about either of these things. Did not ski the 116, regrettably.
Right.
I don't even think I did. I don't even remember seeing
I
one
don't think
on
I
snow.
don't think I saw it. Interestingly, we got to ski the Core 117 this year. That was fun.
Yep.
So,
But not an Oblivion 116.
No.
So we'll save that for next year. And in the meantime, let us know if you have any questions about either of these skis, and we will talk to you soon.
bye.